Hey there, it's Olivia-Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today we are here to talk about, or rather to rant about, A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This is a rant review. I did not like this book. I gave it 1 star. I think it's highly problematic. So if you love this book and you don't want to hear anything negative about this book, this is not the review for you. I'm going to be unfiltered. I'm going to share my honest opinion. These are my thoughts. La-di-da. Let's get into this book. I'm going to have a spoiler-free section at the beginning and then a spoiler-full section at the end. And yeah, let's do it. Let's rage. What is this book about? This book is about these 3 friends and, well, Jude as well, so I would say 4 friends. And these 4 friends are friends with Jude, who has had a terrible past, but none of them really know what happened, and they're trying their best to protect their friend. That is all the synopsis really tells you, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more without spoiling anything. I think this book doesn't really focus on the friendship as much as it says that it is. More so, it's just focusing on Jude and his life and his story. And Jude is a disabled character. I think that's a very important thing to mention that I didn't see enough people mention before going in, because I didn't know that this had a disabled main character. That is the book synopsis. We are going to rage. So, spoiler-free section begins now. And what I want to start with is the author's words herself. And I looked into quite a few interviews. I can link 2 of the main ones that I'm talking about down below. And I just think the author's words themselves really puts this book into context. So the first thing I want to tell you is that she admits in her interview that she did no research before writing Jude's character. She's not a disabled author. I think if you are going to be writing a story about a disabled character, it is respectful, it is necessary to do research on that disability, on disability in general. I think research needs to be done. You can't write a disabled character without doing any research. And that made me angry. And secondly, this one deals a lot with a certain topic and a certain group of people, and also there's been no research done for that, which I also find quite disrespectful. I think if you're going to be writing about experiences that are outside of your own, I can't say if the second representation is outside of her own experience. I don't know about that, so I'm not going to judge her for that, but just generally speaking, if you're going to write a book about characters that are outside of your own experience, please do some research. Please do some research. Another thing that the author says is that she wanted everything to be turned up a little too high. She wanted all of the things in this book to be over-exaggerated, exaggerated far and beyond what it should be. And I have to say that if she wanted that, she was successful in doing that, but I don't think it benefited her story in any way or form. I think it just made it worse because it was so over-exaggerated that I couldn't believe it. And she also mentions that her editors were trying to get her to cut bits out of this book, to tone it down on the intensity on certain types of scenes, and she had to fight with them to keep them all in. And I concur with the editor. I think those scenes should have been taken out. I think because certain scenes were included and more of them happened, it became trauma porn, it became over-exaggerated, it became overdone, and by the end of the book, I didn't feel anything. One of the biggest things I heard when people were reviewing this book before going in was that this book was going to make me sad, but it did not make me sad. It made me angry that someone could put all of this in a single book and it become, you know, a Man Booker Prize finalist and nominated for the several awards that it mentions on the back. And books like this, having all of these awards, just makes me so angry. It makes me so upset. It makes me so disappointed in society. And I think the authors were definitely making the right choice in saying things needed to be cut out. She also says that one of the messages that she wanted to give across with this book was a parable of adulthood, a message for adulthood, and that is that you are on your own. And this is personal opinion, but I don't agree with that message, and I don't think that's a good message to be sharing with people, that in a society where lots of people do feel lonely, the message that we want to get across is that you are alone and you can never be connected to anyone truly. I don't think that's the message that we need to be sending. I don't think that's what we need to be moving towards. And that's why I don't like that message. I don't think that's a good takeaway message for a book like this. And another one of the things that she says is that she wanted to write a character that was beyond the reach of help. She wanted to show this idea that there is a level of trauma, a level of experience where nobody can reach you, where nobody can pull you back and you're truly alone in that place. and these are just interviews that you can read before you read this book, and I found those so disappointing. I don't agree with those ideas personally, and it's good to read books with ideas that you don't agree with, because it helps you figure out what your ideas are. And I think reading this book, even though it doesn't explicitly state those things, I could definitely see those messages, and I just know I wholeheartedly disagree, and it did contribute to me disliking this book. But without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on this book, generally speaking. So first of all, I didn't really like the language that is used in this book. In this book, there's the R word, for example, relating to someone who's disabled, and it's not really said within a character voice, it's just within the text itself. That's just something simple that I don't really like, and I thought I could start there, starting with the simple things. This book is also 800 and something pages. I believe it's 817, don't quote me on that. But it was really, really long, and I think for a book like this it didn't need to be long. There were some parts of it that really could have been cut down on. Even if she wanted to include all of those major scenes that she included, I think you could definitely have trimmed this novel down. So one of the things I really didn't like about this book was the found family. Now, found family is my #1 favourite trope, and I was really looking forward to seeing this 4-boy friendship group that just spans over all of these years, and we really don't get to see that. That friendship is there in the beginning of this book, and it just doesn't feature enough in the book for me to have been satisfied, or for me to feel like this is a found family book. I would not say that. And because that's all the synopsis gives you, it also makes me feel like the synopsis was a bit misleading. As well as that, this found family group is very unconfrontational, and that's something I really don't like seeing in found family. It makes it seem like it's not found family, because in all the found family that I have read other than this book that really adheres to the trope, there's a major confrontation moment, or there are several little confrontations. I think for any healthy friendship there needs to be multiple confrontations, and you can argue that maybe that happens throughout the book, but it really should have happened earlier, and it should have happened to a larger degree. And it's just good, it's healthy to talk about things that forms good relationships. And I didn't really like seeing this found family, because I felt like from what we did get to see of it at the beginning, it just wasn't really as close as I thought it would be, or just as tight-knit group of a group as I thought it would be. But two things that I liked in this book, they're very small things, they're minor things, which is why in the grand scheme of the book I still gave it 1 star. But the one thing I liked was hearing all of the characters talk about their professions. I'm someone who enjoys seeing people talk about their passions and professions and hobbies. So we've got someone in here, we've got 2 artists and, you know, some secondary characters that are artists. We've got someone who's really interested in acting, we've got someone who's interested in interior design and more, and it was nice to hear them talk about those things. But again, those are like pages, like 50 pages total of an 812 book, maybe not even 50 pages, so it's not enough pages to make up for what this book is. But I do want to try and mention, you know, the 2 positive things that I found, otherwise this is all going to be doom and gloom. Then I want to talk about the specific characters in the friendship. So JB is the most horrible friend. He's incredibly spoiled, he's incredibly entitled, and he's incredibly selfish, and I did not like his character, and I'm okay with not liking 1 or 2 characters in a book. You know, give me 1 or 2 unlikable characters and I'm fine, but I would think that nearly every character in this book is unlikable to me, even though not all of them are supposed to be. But I get the impression that JB is supposed to be, and he definitely fulfilled that for me. He had such bad qualities and ideas that I didn't care about him. Now Malcolm, I think, is someone who is pitched as a likeable character, but unfortunately I did not like his character. I think they try and make him a peacemaker who has his own problems, and I can see that element to it, but he's also very observant, and he notices things about Jude that are very important, and, you know, as a good friend he should act on them. He should do something about what he notices, but instead what he does is he avails himself of any sense of responsibility. He sees these things that, you know, demand action, that demand some kind of something for a friend, and he's like, oh, Jude has this problem, let me tell another person in our friend group, and now it's his problem and he needs to deal with it. And I don't think that's good, being a good friend. I think that's just trying to shove someone else's, you know, shove their responsibilities somewhere else, and I really didn't like that about him, and I don't think it changes about him throughout the book, so then I didn't like him. It makes you an incompetent friend. And the other friend that's in this group is Willem, and The funniest thing is that Willem is supposed to be the nicest character, but he's like one of the worst. But I can't talk about that in the spoiler-free section, so if you're sticking around for the spoiler section, I'll get into why William is actually the worst. But in the spoiler-free section, he does come across as likeable, so like, who am I to speak? I also think this book goes into explanations and details of mundane things that we really didn't need. These are the parts of the book that could have been and deleted and it would have been fine. For example, page 106, there's like this long paragraph that's just a huge list of things, and I don't care about this list of things. This list of things means nothing to me, but I still had to read through it. And I think every now and again she does that. She just lists possibilities, or she lists ways of doing things, or she lists things that they do, and I think some people like that in their writing, but for a book that's 812 pages, I don't need that. If it was a book that was 300 pages and you did it once or twice, you could get away with it, but in a book this thick, you really can't. Malcolm and JB are both black characters, and they share their thoughts on race, and I disagreed with both of their thoughts on race and both of the ways that they handle race, and I feel like Malcolm's view was also very narrow-minded. He's such a narrow-minded of what it means to be LGBT+, or what it means to be black, and these discussions like are dropped in the beginning of the book and they're never developed and they're never really unpacked, and then I just wish they weren't included at all, and you could have saved some word space with that. So now we get to the part where we're going to talk about Jude in the spoiler-free section. So Jude is disabled, and in this book it's quickly clear from his point of view that he sees himself as odd, he sees himself as strange, and he kind of feels ashamed of his disability. Now, as an able-bodied person, I'm not going to sit here and tell every disabled person you're not allowed to feel any sense of shame, you're not allowed to feel this, you're not allowed to feel that, you're not allowed to write about that kind of thing. But with this character, Jude, which is also written by an able-bodied person, it's relentless the way that he feels self-loathing towards his disability. It keeps on going, and I think that's sending a certain idea of what other people think disabled people think about themselves, and it's not an idea that I agree with. I don't like to think, or I don't think, from what I've heard from disabled people and from consuming disabled stories, maybe sometimes you have to come to terms with your disability, especially if you were able-bodied before and you become disabled. There's lots of nuances, lots of differences to disabled stories, but I don't think there's this sense of they are ashamed and they hold that forever, and that's their only feeling that they have towards their disability, and this is their whole life, this shame and disgust that they feel towards their disability. And it's not nice to see it in a book, and it's not nice to see able-bodied people perpetuating that kind of idea about disabled people again and again forevermore. Like, please, can we just move on from that kind of narrative? I'm flagging page 176 for this because, at least in my edition, these pages count towards my edition. In page 176, the amount of times Jude says disgusted while talking about himself, or disgusting while talking about himself, just felt very excessive. But you know, that's just one page where I'm flagging. I could quote multiple pages where someone calls Jude disgusting, Jude calls himself disgusting, and it's just disgusting to read that again and again. I was buddy reading this with Serena from A Wandering Mind, and I'm not going to just take her comments and just say they were mine, but she did point out to me, like, female characters, where are they? Jude has like one female character who's in their life, or maybe two, and they're secondary and they don't get much time, and I would have loved to see a female character in his life and some female representation in here. That's the last thing I can say for the spoiler-free section. Everything else that I'm going to say beyond here is spoilers, so you have been warned. Thank you for watching this video. If you wanted spoiler-free review, let me know in the comment section down below. Are you planning to read this book? Are you just not interested? Are you curious to see what it's like yourself? And if you read it, did you love it or hate it? But now let's get into the spoilers. And we're going to start right now with Willem. I've got a lot to say about Willem and how his character is like the worst character in this book, because he is the worst and he's painted to be the nicest, and I do not agree. What I don't like about Willem, and what he points out about himself, is how he lives in a naive kind of way and he doesn't want to do anything. So Malcolm hands off the responsibility to Willem. He's like, oh, I see that Jude is cutting, we need to talk to him about it, and Jude doesn't want to have that conversation. He doesn't want to make any confrontation. I understand. I'm a non-confrontational person. I hate confrontation. I've had to grow up and be an adult and learn that confrontation is healthy and good, and communication is healthy and good. But Willem doesn't do anything, even when it gets really bad. He even starts the conversation with Jude. He starts the conversation about cutting, and then he just doesn't go there. He doesn't go in depth, and I think That's not how you love someone. If you love someone, you love them to the point where you're willing to do these hard conversations, you're willing to make these difficult discussions because you love them. And I'm not saying when he's in a romantic relationship with Jude, I'm saying as a best friend. That kind of love that he's claiming he has for Jude, he should have had that conversation. He should have been able to breach that gap. And that's why I don't believe in their friendship and I don't believe in their relationship, because Jude cannot even make that simple choice. It's not like Willem has any of his own trauma, his own baggage around that situation to hold him back from those conversations. Nah, it's just that he doesn't care enough. It's just that he doesn't want to go there. That was my first flag about him being incompetent. And then there were some other things that happened as the relationship started. So for example, in that tentative space where he starts his relationship with Jude, Willem doesn't know how to consent, honestly. He just like kisses Jude out of the blue, Jude like recoils. He just puts his hand down Jude's trousers, Jude recoils. And every time that he did something like that, I was thinking, you know, you can just ask beforehand and then you avoid the whole situation where Jude has that reaction, you avoid triggering him. Consent is so easy. It's words, and Willem fails to do that. For a moment, you know, I predicted that Jude and Willem were going to get together. I feel like it was kind of obvious from the beginning of the novel, and for a moment there, the relationship was kind of cute. It was like Willem trying to take care of Jude and trying to be understanding, and he wasn't pushing any boundaries. Well, you know, apart from the times where he couldn't ask for consent first. And I was like, you know, this is not too bad. I like this relationship. Right up until the point where they start having sex. And even when they started to have sex and we were in Jude's point of view, I was like, this is not healthy. Jude needs a like ace relationship. He's definitely sex repulsed. But then we switched to Willem and the whole situation made me so uncomfortable, because Willem says and shows us in his point of view that he could see that Jude did not enjoy the sex. He could see that Jude was sex repulsed, but he kept on having sex with Jude because he liked it himself. And that was a big red flag for me. I'm sorry. That was like borderline assault, and it made me so uncomfortable because he knows that Jude is bad at articulating what he wants. He knows that Jude is bad at articulating his feelings, and he knows that Jude will do things for other people because they want it. So the fact that he could see that Jude didn't enjoy it and kept going on rather than having a conversation about it is just one of the biggest red flag, and again shows me that he does not care about Jude. He does not love Jude, because if he loved Jude truly as he's supposed to, as this book is trying to make me believe, he would want to have that conversation. He would want Jude to be happy and comfortable in the relationship rather than forcing his own wants over Jude's. So that was like the end of Willem ever having a chance at being seen in a positive light, in my opinion. And then again with the cutting situation, he can see that the cutting gets worse when Jude is having sex with him, but yet he continues to have sex with Jude, and he tells Jude at the same time that he needs to stop cutting, and that's so hypocritical. That is incredibly hypocritical, and I hated that. I just hated the whole thing around that situation. And there's another fight that they have where right before Jude tells Willem everything about his past and he's cutting, and then Willem throws razors at Jude. He throws razors at Jude, and in trying to get the razor off of Jude, he tackles him to the floor and starts undressing him when he already knows, or even highly suspects to 99%, that Jude is a sex assault victim and that people have likely treated him that way before, like forcefully undressing him. And he does it himself, majorly triggering Jude in the process. That is absolutely not okay. I know Willem's caught up in his feelings at the moment, but that is still does not make it okay, and that's actually scary. Continue to portray Willem in a positive light after that, and I just could not get behind it. I know people make mistakes, but that was like, I'm sorry, that was too much. Willem is portrayed as a likable character. He is not a likable character. Now we're going to talk about disability once again. So one of the good things this book does do is that there's a brief moment where Jude talks about why he's taking this job at this lawyer that's really dodgy, because he needs the money, and money makes a big difference in disabled people's lives. And I liked that it had that moment, because it's true, that is the situation, and I feel like there's not enough like light shed on that kind of situation, so I was here for that discussion. But also, Jude hates every single tool that is ever given to him to help him with his disability. He hates using his wheelchair. I mean, he becomes like indifferent to it later, but he hates using his wheelchair, and he has like a struggle with his prosthetics later on, and he doesn't want his house to be wheelchair friendly, but Malcolm does it anyway. Do you know how hard and how much disabled people fight to get those tools, to get those aids, to have the right to have them, to be able to afford them? Just the fact that Jude is scorning it and spurning it all the way through this book just angered me quite a bit, again because it wasn't from a disabled perspective that all contributed to the fact of this. Page 255, Willem says that he wants to live somewhere that's wheelchair accessible because of the fact that his best friend is disabled, and his girlfriend is like, that is so codependent, you guys are so codependent. Honey, that's not codependent. Just wanted to correct that if anybody got confused. That is not codependent. It's not codependent to want to live somewhere where your friends can visit you. I want to live somewhere that's wheelchair accessible because I would like my sister to visit me. I would like to live somewhere wheelchair accessible because it'd be nice if everywhere was wheelchair accessible, and just accessible in general, not even just wheelchair accessible, disabled accessible. And I don't know, that conversation rubbed me the wrong way, especially as Willem was like, kind of like, oh yeah, that is codependent. No, honey, no it's not. Andy's character, and actually I don't feel like I can talk about Andy's character. I have not done enough research. I'm not well versed in the medical world enough. I liked Andy's character because he does so much for Jude and he really tries his best for Jude, but personally I also think he should have forcefully admitted Jude many times in this book, and he doesn't do it. And again, that's personal feeling. I don't want to speak on this because I do not know enough information to know what somebody should have done in that decision or how to make choices around this kind of sensitive situation in that situation. I can't speak on that. I'm aware of things that I can't speak about, and I'm fine and comfortable saying that. I can't give you an opinion on whether Andy's making the right decisions or not. I also want to talk about Harold, which, again, he's one of those characters that are painted in a very nice light, but I don't think his character is consistent. And I think that's plot device and serving the plot, because Harold is someone who does seem likeable, he does seem nice, he cares about Jude, he's willing to give Jude his space when Jude needs to have his space, but he's also willing to draw the line and say, no, we can't give you space now, you need us, and I know you don't want us, but you need us. And I appreciated the fact that he did that every now and again. But when it served the plot, he didn't do it. One of the key moments that makes absolutely no sense to me is when Caleb, or is his name Callum, whatever his name is, it starts with a C, shows up at the restaurant. Harold discovers that Jude has been abused. Harold is driving home with Jude and Jude has a panic attack. And then he's like, cool, I'll leave you alone, I'll go home, and Jude, you can go home, when he knows that Jude does not feel safe, when he knows that Jude has been ambushed by an abuser, when he knows that Jude is literally having a panic attack and he's spiraling and he's not okay. He leaves Jude alone so that all of the assault that follows can happen because the plot demands that that happens, rather than the fact that Harold's character would never ever leave Jude alone at that time. Harold's character would be like, I know you want space, but you don't need space, and that's not what you need, so I'm not going to give it to you. And I think when it comes to characters like this, sometimes you do have to assert that level of like, I'm listening to you, I understand you, but I don't feel comfortable leaving you alone right now because I love you. And maybe we can go into the same house and I'll stay on the top floor and you can stay on the bottom floor so you can have that space and you can have that time and you can be alone, but I'm not going to let you go to your apartment to be alone. Like, I don't think that makes sense for Harold's character. There were other times where Harold's character made decisions that I don't think he would have made, but the plot needed him to make those decisions. Another case that really bothered me was when JB was addicted to drugs and he was horrible, and all of them came together and staged an intervention for JB. And they did not do that for Jude. Later on in the book, much later on, towards the end, when it comes to Jude's eating disorder, they stage an intervention for him too. But do you know how much book happened? Do you know how much book happened which demanded that Jude have an intervention, and they failed to do it again and again and again? And yet the first moment that JB needs an intervention, the first moment that the richest, most selfish and the most arrogant character needs an intervention, he gets it. Not the poor disabled character who needed one from like page 1. He gets it as soon as he needs it. And I'm like, what does that say? What subliminal message does that bring across? That some people are more valued than others, that some people deserve help more than others, that, you know, in both situations, Jude doesn't want help in the beginning of the book, JB doesn't want help in this situation, but they demand and make sure they give it. And I was so angry at that moment because, you know, sure, it's good to give JB help. I'm not complaining that they're helping someone who's in a drug addiction situation who clearly needs help. I'm complaining because certain characters are not beyond help and other types of characters are, and I think that's not an okay message to send. Minor thing, but on page 323 there's ableism towards neurodiverse characters. We've got some, I believe, autistic characters who have PhDs, and they are being taken under the wing of a certain professional in an industry so that the professional industry person can show them how they need to behave and how they should think and help them through their working through navigating this industry while neurodiverse. First of all, the way that they talked about it made it seem like the students were incapable, but they have PhDs, you know, they've gotten this far without guidance, without that kind of support, and maybe they had support in other ways, but if they have PhDs, I'm really sure that they're capable. I'm really sure that they don't need to be taught how to be in social situations, and even then, maybe the problem is with the industry. Maybe the problem is with how the industry runs things and how the industry dictates things, and maybe it needs to be made more accommodating rather than the fact that they need to be schooled into how to do it in this kind of situation or how to be social in this kind of situation, if you get what I mean. It's kind of a give or take, and I know that you can argue against what I'm saying here, but from the way that it's worded on page 323, it just rubbed me the wrong way and I did not like it. Now we should talk about the desensitizing. So I'm done holding this book because I don't care. We can just put it, you know, you can see the spine in the background there. I don't want to hold it anymore. One of the ways in which this book was incredibly desensitizing is that in the beginning I was horrified. In the beginning I was horrified at Jude's cutting. As I learned about what happened with brother Luke, I was absolutely horrified by it. It was like, wow, that's disgusting, wow, that's awful. I felt emotional, I felt sad, I felt angry, I felt all of the things that the author wants me to feel when reading a story like this. However, she continues. She adds Caleb or Callum, whatever his name is. She adds Dr. Trailer, which was the most unnecessary addition that there could possibly be. She adds Willem dying. She adds the eating disorder. She adds this, that, everything. And she layers it on and on and on. So by the time, you know, we'd heard about Dr. Trailer, we'd heard about brother Luke, we'd heard about his self-harm, every time that he cut, like, after a certain point in the book, I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel sad, I didn't feel angry, I was just like, that's it, I don't feel anything, because I've been so desensitized by everything that's going on. When I was reading about the brother Luke situation, I felt disgusted to my core and I felt angry and sad, but when I read about the Dr. Trailer situation, I felt absolutely nothing. The fact that I could read such horrible scenes and feel absolutely nothing just goes to show how desensitized I was by this book. And it's, you know, the author wanted to over-exaggerate, she succeeded, but it was to her detriment, because by the end of this book, I didn't feel anything, which means I couldn't feel sad. I couldn't say that this book had an emotional impact on me because I just felt empty. And I don't think that's the feeling that she wanted to give us. I don't think she wanted us to feel empty. You could say that maybe she did, but what I think she wanted us to feel was empty and sad and despondent and depressed. Yeah, I just didn't feel any of those things by the end. Instead, I just felt frustrated by how much I had a lack of feeling. So I don't think it's good craftsmanship to over-exaggerate things and then push readers past the point of any type of feeling. I think good craftsmanship is when you've got them feeling that sadness and feeling that despondency and being able to feel such a sad emotion and then turn the story around and make you feel euphoria and happiness. Like, if this book had a happy ending, I would have commended it. I would have been like, wow, this book can make me feel the lowest of lows and then bring me to the highest of highs, and I wouldn't think that any writing could make me bridge that gap, but hers did. I think that would have been a very effective writing, or to be like, this is the lowest of low, and then you end it there. End it on the lowest of low, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I never knew I could feel these feelings, feel dragged down so low, and then be left that way. Now what am I going to do with my life? That could have been a good feeling to have. But the feeling of, I've been dragged so low and now there's nothing left, is just ineffective to me and useless and worthless, and I'm not gonna remember this book for the feelings it gave me. I'm going to remember this book because I thought it was not well done. Some last page numbers. Page 647. She successfully drives home the fact that she believes some people are past hope. I believe Willem says that, you know, therapy is not going to be useful to Jude. Therapy is not going to make him better. It might make him less sick, but he's beyond the fact that he could be saved or helped in that way. Yeah, that was, you drove that home with that page. Then we move on to page 649, which is this whole monologue and all these pages that Willem has where he's talking about how Jude needs repairing, or it's not his job to repair Jude. And maybe it's not his job to repair Jude, but I hated the way that he used repair and fix and threw it around here, there and everywhere, because disabled people aren't broken, and we need to stop the narrative that if you're disabled you're broken. And he is talking about mental health as well, but I just feel like I'm done with the words fix and repair being held up alongside disabled, and we need to stop that. We need to stop doing that. It's harmful, it hurts people, please stop. I felt like Willem's death was very predictable from early on. I feel like the suicide attempt that happens halfway was predictable from early on. I think the suicide at the end was predictable from early on, because this is a narrative I see too much. I'm done with the narrative from able-bodied people that disabled people need to commit suicide or euthanasia is an acceptable option. I'm really done with it. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm angry. It makes me sad to see. I'm gonna switch to talking about something else to help me talk about this. My younger sister used to love watching comedy, but she said in so much comedy the butt of the joke was disabled people, and how disabled people should commit suicide, how disabled people are worthless. Disabled people were made the butt of the joke again and again and again, and she ended up crying. She ended up internalizing all of this idea that disabled people are worthless, disabled people shouldn't be living, disabled people should commit suicide. That is such a harmful message to send. I don't think I've ever read a book by a disabled person that ends in suicide or ends in euthanasia. Do you know why? Because they believe their lives are worth living. Do you know why they believe that? Because hey, their lives are worth living. Their life isn't worth less because it doesn't fit into our capitalistic ideas of societal norms of what a life should be like. They are people. They have emotions. Imagine how you would feel if every time you saw a character in a book that was like your personality, that looked like you, ended up dead at the end. Every single time. I know that the black community has faced storylines like this in horror films for years. I know there are other communities who have struggled with seeing storylines like this for years. And yet, while we have some conversations about those going down, I still see books by able-bodied authors winning awards and being famous which end in disabled people committing euthanasia or disabled people committing suicide. And everybody's like, wow, that's so sad. But have you thought about disabled people reading these narratives and perceptions of themselves again and again, and how much it's going to affect their mental health and affect themselves? Because I think we need to take a pause and think about that before we keep promoting books like these. And it just makes me so angry, and I think that is the thing that made me angriest about this book. Because when I was reading this book, I was not having a good time. I was thinking about DNFing. In fact, I would have DNF'd that book in a second if A, it wasn't a buddy read, and B, I wanted to read to the end. Because I wanted to know if Jude was going to commit suicide at the end. Because I thought he was. From page like 25, I could predict that he was going to do that. Because that is the narrative that I see pushed so much by able-bodied people when it comes to disabled people. And I've talked about this enough, and I don't want to keep talking about it, but I just think it was such a letdown to see how famous this book is with these messages in it. I think they're problematic. I think they're so harmful. And I don't want to say anything more on it. I think I'm done giving this book time. The last thing that's in my notes is the fact that at the end there's like 1 or 2 sentences where like, oh, by the way, Richard died early, and Andy died early, and everyone died early. Yo, I didn't care. I didn't feel anything by the end of the book. You didn't need 2 lines to throw in a bunch of sadness in 2 sentences and brush over it, because that is just overkill when you've overkilled the overkill. I don't know. I can't talk about A Little Life anymore. I'm getting rid of this book. Can't wait. Considered burning it. I'm done. I'm just really done. And I didn't even think that talking about it was going to make me this angry and sad, but it really did. So, now that that's over, we can talk about good things in the next video. I think I've got a fun recommendations coming up. I'm going to be raving about Mr. Impossible, so I'm going to be talking about one of my favourite books to counteract this Rant review. We will have a fangirl review. Let me know in the comment section down below anything you want to let me know. Let's just choose an emoji. I don't have any questions to ask you. I just feel done. So let's put the tick emoji, because I am done. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thumbs down if you hate me now. You know, in the grand scheme of things, this book wins because this book is a bestseller. This book is a National Book Award finalist. This book is whatever you want. This book is world famous. So this book wins. I lose. Disabled people lose. this book wins. Yeah. You know what? I'm done. I can't even be like onwards and upwards. Excelsior. Excelsior.